no matter the cost of lives, no matter how many body bags we will need. We have to, and this is where leadership really comes in, we have to assess the situation. We are under-resourced, our troops are under-supported, we don't have the firepower anymore, we don't have the right ammunition, we've got nothing really to use against the drones. And remember, no matter whoever says, the M23 is being supplied with sophisticated members by the Rwanda army.
All right.
They have precision-guided mortars. They use drones, and we don't have an answer.
Well, in making a similar call towards the end of the year last year, the EFF's president, Julius Malema, had said that we are so under-resourced that he wouldn't even hire the army to take care of his cabbages at the time. So, is this the point that we need to make the decision? Should we stay in the DRC, or is it time to call it and leave? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. Coming up on the show today, in the second hour of the show, we're going to turn our attention to illegal mining in the country. This is off of last week. Remember that comment by the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe, who said 60 billion rand, that's the cost to the economy of illegal mining activity in the country. Well, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into some of those comments. We'll be joined by Franz Baleni, former mine worker unionist and now serving as a non-executive director in various companies. Peter Major will also be part of that conversation. I see that the Department of Minerals and Energy has now said that they will not be coming on to be part of that particular conversation, but nonetheless, we'll dig a little bit deeper into it. And then the final hour of the show, last week, quite a significant ruling in the Gauteng High Court, in the North Gauteng High Court, rather, in Pretoria. And this is where the regulations governing the 370 COVID-19 social relief of distress grant were declared unconstitutional and invalid. We'll unpack what that particular court judgment means now for the implementation and the distribution of the 370 relief of distress grant. But of course, also then talk about, well, when exactly do these measures need to be implemented? And of course, we know nothing happens at the snap of a finger, right? It is policy involved here. There is the Department of Social Development that also would need to come on board and weigh in on the implications of this particular court judgment. So that's the conversation we'll have in the final hour on of the show. It is the talking point. Looking forward to hearing from you. It's the open line, your national roundtable. Remember, you can raise whatever matter of national interest, but I would really like to get a strong sense by the end of the hour about how you feel about this conflict in the DRC and the deployment of South African soldiers. Should we stay? Should we go?
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
With Ford's Blue Sky offers, get a new Ranger XL from just $5,899 per month, including our optional service plan. 10% deposit, prime is 4.75%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers where our Ford family guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. T&Cs apply.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
This morning we start off in Jozini. Romeo, good morning.
Cathy, good morning, long time. How are you?
Good, Romeo. Go for it.
Cathy, I've got a lot in my mind. The first one, I just wanted to congratulate my team for winning yesterday, the Bagabagas. You know, they won, they made us sleep peacefully and with a lot of joy in our hearts. So what remains on Saturday, Alipelumoya, be careful. That's all I can say.
Look, you know, Romeo, it is good, but I'm trying not to celebrate too soon. You know, I'm holding off on my celebrations. It's been a so yeah, but
for a very long time I've been out of the radio, and the last time I heard that you have delivered 2 sets of twins, and I was very happy, and I couldn't say congratulations. I'm happy, siyabonga kakhulu nokudeliver ama-twins. So congratulations to you, Cathy.
Thank you, Romeo. You're now left with a minute to actually talk about what you want to talk about.
Yeah, what I'm about
Use
to
it
say
wisely,
now,
Romeo.
Yes, what I'm about to say now over the issue of M23. The deployment of soldiers in DRC was a noble idea in terms of SADC issue, but how it is being described by many other people in terms of how they see things, equally the same as how I see things personally myself. I think we need a peaceful SADC. That is number one. However, if we are to talk of peace in DRC, there is no way we can talk peace without Rwanda and Uganda. Once those countries are out, and the deployment of military in Mozambique by Rwanda, to thwart those rebels in Capitado, it is a military intelligence by Paul Kagame, knowing very well that South African soldiers will be there. It's about testing their strength and powerful. Now that 9 soldiers of South Africa were killed, to them in their hearts it's a celebration. To us it's a grief, and we are really crying over this. My condolences to the families that have lost their family members in this civil war. So my observation to this, an emergency meeting is needed as soon as possible to clear all these problems that are found in DRC, because the people of DRC have suffered a lot. It's like
and Romeo, to the extent that we are now possibly thinking about sending in reinforcements to the DRC as a country, do you think that's the right move in this moment?
For now, it cannot be the right move to do so. It has to be the so-called wait and see while the Security Council United Nations have to come up with another solution that could be much more stronger than the previous one. Because for Rwanda to have this relationship with the British, the first caller in the Tulasi Melan on this matter, he spoke very well. It could be that Rwanda is being supported by the big guns in the Western Bloc in Europe. And therefore, what we are doing is like we are not winning this war, and we are not going to win. Look at this war. Okay. It has been there for years and years. Why is it not finishing? Does it mean to say that if they group their military, they are being defeated by M23? No.
Okay. Romeo, in Jozini, we're going to leave it there with you for this morning. Let me go to Kabeja. Anonymous, good morning.
Morning, Katie. A quick one. I've been to the DRC, right? Because I've got some business interests and networks there. And you know the DRC has got the most mineral resources in the whole of Africa. That country's got everything. That's why there is that conflict and contention, right? But the question that no one is asking is, what is South Africa's interest, Okay? What is their interest in the DRC? No country deploys its soldiers to any conflict zone if they don't have an interest. That is the job of the UN and peacekeeping forces. So that's the question that must be asked. What is the economic interest why South African soldiers are there? That's the question.
And to the extent that the answer to that question, Anonymous, has not been clearly articulated, what then does it say about the deployment of the SANDF there?
Precisely the point that I'm making, that there are mining interests that needs to be protected, all right? And these mining interests, for whatever reason, must have people that are from South Africa that have those interests. Very higher up people. And so, therefore, the soldiers have to be sent to guard that interest. That's what it is, really. Who it is or who it's not, I can't mention, but that's what it is.
Okay, all right. Anonymous, we'll leave it there. Anonymous out in Gqeberha. And of course, we know officially that the soldiers have been deployed to the DRC as part of a peacekeeping mission aimed at promoting, some stability in the region and helping to safeguard the region. Those are just some of the statements that have been made publicly for why South African soldiers are in that part of the continent in the first place. Okay, let's do this. I'm looking at the time. What we'll do, we'll take a couple of WhatsApp voice notes. It'll lead us into the 9:30 news headlines, and then I'll continue with your calls. Remember, this is the open line. It's your national round table. The number to dial 086 000 2032. That's the phone line for our studio, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Cathy. Those forces are at DRC. What is their role and what is South Africa's interest in the DRC that we have to be there? And why not other African countries working together like the SADC? It's Anonymous, David. Thank you. Good show.
Good morning. In the headlines, the Umkhonto weSizwe Party's expelled convener, Mary Padi, has accused the party's deputy president, John Hlophe, of sexual harassment. The Good Party says it will consult the Hawks following DA Federal Chairperson Helen Zille's alleged admission that she had prior knowledge of police raids on Cape Town Mayoral Committee members' offices. And the High Court in Cape Town is expected to hand down judgment in the discharge application of alleged underworld gang boss Nafiz Modak. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Compliments for 2025, Mangani. Call me Mabel Goals because I'm coming for it all this year. Body, relationship, and financial goals. With my Just Invest account, financially I'm cruising. 2 more to go. You know any available Prince Charming voiceman?
I've got you, Mabel. Sorienga. Mara, you can also be like Mabel and earn up to 8.25% in interest to start the year right. Open yours via the Money app today. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. Promo rates apply. Go to nedbank.co.za for more information.
This January, to save money, you could cut back on the milk in your cereal. Or you could switch to Outsurance and save on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand and make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Katie, and your producer, and all the listeners of SAFM. Happy Monday, Katie. Katie, I like to say this. why the government is celebrating the artist of South Africa when he's no longer alive. But when he's still alive, there is no celebrating for the artist that maybe is doing well, you know. But now, most of us, we love American musician, but we don't care about the South African musician. So to me, this thing is unfair. It's not good at all. So the government must always watch for the artist of South Africa and celebrate them when he's still alive, not celebrating someone when he's not alive.
Good morning, Sis Cathy. Let's all in East London. DRC, Sis Cathy, it's time we move. It's time we pull out. It's no use because we don't have the resources. We don't have the budget either. So it's better we pull out. Simple. We have done our best, but it's better now we pull out. Yeah. There's no transparency. What are they protecting? Let's all East London.
This DRC issue will only end if there is dialogue. Militarily, this thing will never end. We were there. I'm a former soldier in the Air Force in Zimbabwe there. That first operations, we were there when Mandela was still in power. We were there. We lost quite a number of aircraft there, a number of men there. There was relative peace for a short period of time, but the rebels were still there. Until now, they are still there. That time, it was a very big force, and even the Angolan forces were there again, operating there in full force. But it didn't end. This thing, it just needs a bit of sitting on the table and talking about it. Not this military thing, it won't end.
South African deployment of soldiers to DRC is out of order. It must be withdrawn with immediate effect. Not that South Africa is not supposed to deploy in DRC. We're supposed to deploy in DRC and be in the forefront. We just don't have the army. Our army can't look after cabbages. We just don't have the army. The army has collapsed.
All right, so those there, some of the comments touched on it earlier by the CIC of the youth of the EFF, apologies for that, of the EFF, at the time also weighing in on the issue of the deployment of South African troops to the DRC. That was in February 2024. And of course, South Africa's deployment is part of the commitment made by SADC in as far as that maritime security strategy is concerned. That is part of the route of how we even ended up in the DRC in the first place. And that deployment, of course, also included a regional force comprised of individuals from Malawi, from Tanzania, that is in the broader part of the continent to strengthen the activity there. Crispin, you're out in Durban. Good morning. You want to talk about the DRC as well?
Good morning, Cathy. I think, look, people need to go back to the history before this. Critical here is the role of Rwanda, and who, first of all, was allowed, who facilitated in some ways the genocide in Rwanda, which is certain Western powers. Not that they can take total responsibility, the responsibility was also in the Rwandans who carried out the genocide. But the attitude from the West seems to have been that once you've had a genocide against you, from then on you can do what you like because, you suffered and you're a victim, and therefore it doesn't matter anymore what you do, because that's the way that Paul Kagame has been treated by the West since then. And that has allowed him to interfere yet again within the DRC at the immense cost of lives. I mean, it's a cynical and, frankly, in the end, a racist situation where the lives of people of the DRC are treated as entirely expendable because they're military, because of the mineral resources. Then, I mean, historically, there's an excellent film out about the events leading up to and after the killing of Lumumba, which was sanctioned by the Americans and the Belgians. Right-wing white South Africans went up there and were involved in the genocide of people in the eastern DRC. So there's still some sort of historical responsibility, not from the part of the ANC, obviously, but we have had a historical connection to that area, to mining in that area. But I think part of it is for South Africa to openly state that it's holding certain other countries responsible for reining in what Rwanda is doing in that region, and exposing the dishonesty and the racism.
Crispin, you've raised such an important issue, which is around also the suffering of people just in that part of the DRC. Look at Goma and the situation that has been in that particular city for a number of years. Do you think that from a global community and even a continental point of view, that we are truly committed to improving human lives? So if we talk about silencing the guns, do our actions actually speak to the interest of human life and preserving human life, or it's actually just driven by economic interests and where we can add in, where we can have the pretense of also saving human lives, then we'll add that to it?
Well, I think that South Africa can at least foreground these issues of simply the lives of people in the DRC. This has now gone on since the Belgians took over, seized that whole territory. And it amazes me how few people really know that history, how few people understand how Leopold II of Belgium was at least as bad as Hitler. I mean, you wouldn't know that from most educational systems in the world, that the slaughter under Leopold was comparable to the Holocaust in Europe. But of course, the people in the DRC were not white, and the world took it seriously as the reigning powers only after the Second World War. Until then, we didn't have even the term genocide. But I do think that we should be, as South Africa, saying there are human rights involved here. People cannot be treated in this way. And that's the starting point. And every country that has some leverage, including the US, the UK, France, Belgium, these countries must all explain to the world what they are doing to protect the rights of ordinary people.
All right, Crispin, thank you for that contribution. Calvin, you're calling from Pretoria. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
Well, thank you. What do you want to talk about this morning?
I'm the first-time caller.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I have been listening to you over the years. So you have been discussing issues that are in my heart, especially the topic of today.
Well, today's topic must be really, really close to your heart, because if you've been listening for years but only calling today, then there's an issue there, Calvin.
Yeah, indeed. So, Cathy, I heard the views of the callers and the listeners on this topic. So I am of the view that as the South African government, we should continue to do what we've been doing over the years. You will recall, Cathy, that the DRC has been very volatile over the years during Joseph Kabila. And when Kabila was defeated, then there was an inter-Congolese dialogue that the South African government sponsored for the wearing sectors in the DRC to come to South Africa at Sun City, where the Sun City resort was closed for 2 weeks, to make sure that the fighting forces in the DRC, they must get the resolution of the Congolese problem. Then President Thabo Mbeki told them that you are not going to come out of this venue until you reach an agreement. Hence, we had the government of national unity in the DRC led by Joseph Kabila. So, in essence, South Africa has got a lot of obligations on the multinational organizations like your SADC, your AU, your UN. So, through MONUC, South Africa has contributed its defense force to go and assist in the DRC. It's one of the obligations that we have as a country, as a republic, to these national organizations. So the resolution of the Congolese issue has a direct effect on us as South Africa. If the DRC becomes stable, we'll be able to then send our private sector to go and assist in the economic recovery of the DRC, whereby we will be giving the DRC government technology and all other things through private sector, whereby these companies, when they do business in the DRC, they will make a lot of money. Once they do that, doing business, making a lot of money, when they repatriate their funds back to the Republic,
So, Calvin, you were saying that South Africa should continue its presence in the DRC as part of an investment for what it could reap in the future. But the reality is that whether or not we are responding to our international obligations, that must be underpinned by good budgets. And as things stand, last year, even at the time of the deployment of our forces to the DRC, we didn't have enough money to actually fully support them. And we still don't.
See, the issue of the budget, of the national budget, it's a sensitive issue. And allow me not to discuss about that. Because it's a well-known fact that the South African fiscus is draining due to a lot of global economic implications around the world. It's not only the South African government that is facing this phenomenon. So allow me not to make comment on that, if you can, please, Cathy.
All right. Calvin, in Pretoria, we can leave it there with you then for this morning. He says the army should stay in the DRC because of the potential gain, the potential benefit that could lie in stock for South Africa once there is peace, once there is stability. I wonder what you make of that. Let me go to Pomona. Walter, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy.
Oh, Walter, you're on the road. I'm struggling to hear. I'm going to ask that we just put back. There we go. Much better. I'm going to ask that we try and get Walter on a different line. Sorry about that. Let me go to James in Johannesburg. Good morning.
Hello, Cathy.
Yes, James.
Yes, look, I know that you're talking about the DRC today, but I couldn't avoid, what I saw over the weekend about the DNU.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm surprised that, after so many years of the GNU being formed, we're still talking about the statements of intent, and to the extent that, ANC is working with a party that is opposing it more than any other party. I mean, the DA, as things are in South Africa, is the antithesis of the ANC. I don't see how they'll work together. I think one of them must just withdraw from the so-called GNU so that this thing can be rearranged. Because, there are too much contradictions from within than outside, And when you look at it, ANC is working the party that are really naturally, in opposition to it. I mean, look at the ANC and the Freedom Front Plus and the DA and many other parties there. So I'm just saying that, we are in for a long ride. So from now until the next election, nothing will be done. Nothing will be done at all. I think that one of them, or I think for me, is just a group of people, trying to work together.
James, when we say nothing will be done, let's try and give something to that nothing. So what are you looking at as markers there? What would be your indicators of progress?
I want improvement on education, for instance. For me, that is fundamental. But I can see that both the ANC and the EFL, the ANC and the DA are in disagreement with that. They don't agree on it at all. And then I want, because remember, for me, the land is the most important thing that will mitigate against poverty. But the DA is in opposition to the ANC moving towards, the ANC giving people access to land. You understand? So then where will they go from there? Because for me, those are the fundamentals. I can talk about security. I can talk about many other things. But I know that even on those ones are going to disagree with one another. Even on corruption, for instance. And, whenever there's an allegation of corruption against the DA, leaders, and then the DA defend those leaders. But they are quick to point corruption elsewhere. So my point is really, we are being failed by this arrangement. This arrangement is not going to bear fruit for an ordinary person, It's just them, eating. And I can tell you that the DA, they've tasted the blue light and everything. They're not going to leave. I want them to leave the GNU, I want them to leave the GNU and be in opposition because they're just in opposition. They're not working to. I want them to leave,
Okay.
So that ANC can work with like-minded parties. I mean, we need service delivery, we need progress, and then they are fighting each other. I mean, look at this issue, for instance. Who's opposing ANC most in this bill that was just being signed, the expropriation bill? It's the DA. And now they want to tell us that they're working together. They're wasting our time, Kate.
All right. James out in Johannesburg. Yeah, wants the DA to leave the government of national unity. I think you answered your own question, James. I don't see that happening anytime soon. It looks like we're going to continue to have the public opposition to what is happening in government. But at some point, there also has to be a realization, right? The DA has to come to terms with the fact that it is now part of government. So the idea of distancing itself from certain decisions in government is only going to go so far in terms of the public imagination. One of our listeners saying that he agrees with our caller in Pretoria, Calvin, on his sentiment on the issue of Goma and why the SANDF is there. He says it's not a bad idea to protect businesses, South African businesses. Who must protect them? Those businesses are important to the country and play a major role for our economy. If we want to build an economy, it's also important that South Africa goes out into Africa and brings the money back home. That's one view there. Some way gets in Bloemfontein says, good morning, Cathy. I'm a former soldier, and the truth of the matter is our government doesn't care about our soldiers. Look at the Minister of Defense and compare with the U.S. Secretary of Defense. That guy was a 4-star general in the army. Me Njibatung, the ANC doesn't care. Even the president is so quiet. That's one view there. Let me go to Walter. Walter and Pomona, you're back on the line. Good morning.
Good morning, Kate. How are you?
Much better. Good, thanks. Go for it, Walter.
I wanted to speak about these soldiers killed in Goma. So according to me, I don't have that much information, but according to me, they are there. They're working as a security there at the mines owned by the ANC. Yeah, careful. The other thing about the application of the universities, I have my nephew, man, who... Cathy, are you there?
I'm listening, Walter.
Okay. I have two nephews who applied there by VES in 2023 and 2024, but they never get the space. But now, I paid last year, I paid even in 2023 for 250 or 300 application fee. But now when I listen to SAFM again a week ago, they're saying VES only, they receive almost 300 and something applications from Matric. So when you multiply that 300 and something thousand, multiply by 250 rand, that is 90 million. I was doing this with my wife yesterday. That is almost 90 million for only application. And that is a lot of money. Where do they take this money to? Because these students, they're still going to, only the university is going to take almost 6,400 or less than 7,000 students.
Yeah.
So why are you going to take all this 90 million for?
Okay.
What is that so?
Okay, Walter, I think it's a fair question, Walter out in Pomona, but perhaps just for purposes of the record, Wits confirmed that at the time they were sitting with close on 100, I think if I'm to round it off, it would have been 120,000 applications. So it was not 300,000, but around 120,000 applications, if memory serves correct. I do think, though, your question is valid, but we know that all of these application forms have to be processed, etc. So there is a cost attached to that, but maybe what is happening perhaps with the rest of the money once they've been able to cover the administrative aspects of processing each and every application. Lala, you're in Polokwane. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and happy Monday. I just want to start by quoting to you what Professor Patrick Lubumba said. He said, we elect hyenas to take care of gold, and when the gold go missing, you wonder why. I want to put this as a basis for my argument for the issue of the new law that the President just signed last week about the land. It is indeed a good law, but it's not going to benefit the ordinary people. It's going to benefit the hyenas. Okay, I want to give an example with the issue of the Estina project in Bloemfontein or in Free State. Ordinary people from the community were given their farm to work it and to make living from it. But it was later on hijacked by those who are connected and the politicians for their own benefits. And I can also remind you of what happened to, I don't know if you remember, in Tolerance, we used to have the guy called Ike Gekana, who was dismissed after he was being questioning the wife of the former premier of the Northern Transvaal, the Northern Province, Mr. Ngwagora Mathodi, because his wife was taking someone's farm without compensating that person. If these people were able to do that during that time when there was no law that was able to protect them and to give them power to do that, what more about this time when they have this law that has a lot of technicalities? They can even say, come to my place and say, no, we are going to do something here, we want you to move from here. Because there is a law that now is going to protect them. They are going to take our land. They are going to take the land for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the country, not for the benefit of the poor people.
All right, Lala, thanks for that contribution. I must say, though, that the process that it's going to entail is going to be a lot more detailed than how you're describing it. And really, when one gets into the nitty-gritty of it, you realize that there isn't a lot that has fundamentally changed in terms of what is going to apply for expropriation without compensation. It just makes it easier for there to be nil compensation in the event of expropriation of certain property taking place. And these are matters that are going to be coming before courts. So yeah, it won't be as simplistic perhaps as you might be thinking about it. Sekhatli, you're in Mankweng. Good morning.
This is Cathy.
I hope your radio is off.
Yeah, no, it's off.
All right.
Lekai.
Rona Sekhatli, go for it.
Thank you. All right. Sorry. Now I'm not worried about what happened there. I'm too worried about even not only about the soldier. I'm worried about the entire law enforcement of South Africa. So the quality, number one. So, and you look at previously when we were selecting the soldiers, it was about the fitness, height, and everything. So, just because we do have some things like laws that were broken, and then Commission of Human Rights, then when they entertain and say no, they also need to be employed even as short as they are. Then, because some of even the police, for example, I mean, if somebody comes and say, I'm coming to arrest you, just because I'm not saying people must just take advantage of them the way I'm going to say. But you can just see, this little boy is coming through. You can see, man, it's not that material. The material is not that good. You know, that's my problem. Problem is, and again, the kind of the soldiers that we used to have, it was not about having a metric or what, but it's an advantage in a way. But it was about fitness. It's either, when I'm talking about fitness, some of them are overweight, so then a soldier cannot even run. Some of them, they cannot even carry R4. You can see that R4 is heavy to this person.
Which soldiers are you talking about, Sekhatli? Because I don't want us to be so broad in our view. Are you talking about soldiers that you have seen? Where did you see them?
That we've got now. That not all of them, but most of them.
Yeah, but where did you see them, Sekhatli? Where did you see these overweight soldiers that don't know how to carry guns?
Okay, I'll tell you, Cathy. The other time I went to I attended the funeral, and then unfortunately the person was member of the South African Defence Force. So I looked at what they were even just failing the commands. They said, "Stallion, slow march." You see that march, that slow march that they are doing when one of them is normal. The other one was started with the left, the other one was started with the right. So then all of a sudden we can see that this one is marching, started with the left foot, this one started with the right foot. So then they started to, you can see it was a joke. So we don't have the quality. The training has collapsed. Julius is right. Those train, the kind of the training that we do have, it has collapsed. And then as a result of that, other countries are looking at us and say, shame, man, look at this country. We need a real training.
Okay. Sekhatli, out in Mankweng, I'm not going to argue further. I wasn't there when the stallion command was made. I didn't get to see the consequences of that. It's 10 o'clock, time for the latest news.
In our top stories, MK Party Deputy President accused of sexual harassment and Helen Ziller under fire over prior knowledge of police raids. Good morning. A senior Mkhonto weSizwe Party member, Mary Padi, has accused the party's deputy president, John Hlophe, of sexual harassment. Padi claims Hlophe invited her to his hotel room with the intent of having sexual relations after a leadership meeting in Mbombela last year. Padi has reportedly detailed her allegations in a letter to MK Party President Jacob Zuma. She elaborates.
He must be suspended as such and be informed then. They investigate the matter. If you are claiming to be the member of Mkhonto weSizwe, same with myself, because I'm now the convener of the province, but I had to go through the legal processes because of the way I've been treated unfairly, and the court has granted me an opportunity to be able to lead fairly because the internal processes were not followed. I think in this case, he must be suspended as well, and then internal processes or this matter must be looked at it very seriously.
The Good Party says it will consult the Hawks following DA Federal Chairperson Helen Zilla's alleged admission that she had prior knowledge of police raids on Cape Town Mayoral Committee members' offices. This comes after raids were conducted on the offices of J.P. Smith and Xanthia Limburg on Friday. Brett Heron is the Good Party's Secretary General.
The fact that Helen Zilla says she knew that raids were imminent late last year already, and then this is confirmed by J.P. Smith in his personal statement where he says he also became aware that he was under investigation, would undermine the purpose of conducting a surprise search, because if Helen Zilla was aware of this from late last year, the question arises, did she inform J.P. Smith and Xanthia Limburg? How did J.P. Smith become aware of it if Helen Zilla didn't inform them? And if she did, that gave them weeks, maybe months, to remove or eliminate any evidence, if there was any evidence in the first place.
The High Court in Cape Town is expected to hand down judgment in the discharge application of alleged underworld gang boss Nafiz Modak. He and 14 others are facing several charges, including the murder of top cop Charles Kinnear. The detective from the anti-gang unit was gunned down nearly 5 years ago outside his home in Bishop Lavis. The accused also face more than 100 charges, including attempted murder, extortion and corruption. Modak applied for the charges against him to be dropped. Defence analyst Dean Wingren says the SANDF troops deployed to the Democratic Republic of Congo would be better utilised patrolling South Africa's borders. Meanwhile, the M23 rebels who have taken over the town of Goma in the DRC say they will make an announcement this morning. 9 South Africans were killed in fierce fighting with the rebels on Friday last week. 4 other soldiers from Malawi and Uruguay were killed a day later. Wingren says if government decides to keep the soldiers in the DRC, it must ensure that they have strong backing.
You must have a sufficiently capacitated and equipped army that if you are going to deploy them 3,000 kilometers away, then they must be supported. And unfortunately, if they cannot be supported, if you don't have sufficient logistics to support them, enough ammunition, even small things like toilets and hot food and safe accommodation, then perhaps they shouldn't be there. And there might be more beneficial patrolling South Africa's borders, and particularly in the eastern part of our country, such as northern Mozambique, which is facing ISIS terrorists.
And finally, the White House says the U.S. will not go ahead with tariffs on Colombia. This after Colombia agreed to accept deported migrants without restrictions. U.S. President Donald Trump had ordered 25% tariffs on all Colombian goods. This after Colombia's President Gustavo Petro barred 2 U.S. military deportation flights from landing in the country yesterday. Petro had initially responded by saying his country would accept repatriated citizens on civilian planes without treating them like criminals. Recapping the top story, a senior Mkhonto weSizwe party member, Mary Padi, has accused the party's deputy president, John Hlophe, of sexual harassment. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
7 after 10, welcome to the second hour of the show. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be looking a bit more closely at the issue of illegal mining, and in particular, trying to understand the impact that illegal mining has on the South African economy. We'll also interrogate some of the figures that were shared by the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe last week. He put that figure at 60 billion rand. He says illegal mining costs South Africa on an annual basis. Before we get into that, it's 8 after 10 o'clock. Lots of your WhatsApp voice notes from the open line. We'll take a couple of those voice notes and it'll lead us into our conversation for this hour.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Cathy and SAFM listeners. Cathy, I want to know maybe now, what is Paseka Letsatsi going to do about the SRD money that some people did not receive since COVID-19, that when that SRD was introduced? How is he going to sort out those people now? Because some were begging from the families. Some people owe people money because they were borrowing with the hope of that they will be paid. Thank you. It's Lucy in Gauteng.
Good morning, Sister Cathy. This is Akimatebola. Sister Cathy, we a lot of times seeing these so-called politicians wearing the scarves of Palestinians and all that. But when it comes to DRC, these politicians, they talk less about DRCs. There's war in DRC, and it's been long since the time of Tate Thabo Mbeki. Our troops were there, and now they have been killed. Almost every year we see the body bags come back. So I think we must do away with DRC if there is no dialogue that can resolve this issue. This is Akimatebola.
Good morning, Ask Cathy. What is annoying me today is that I'm a 35-year-old woman and I'm unemployed. What is very disturbing is that we are told by 60, 50-year-olds that we 35-year-olds can't be employed. How come? They're old and sleepy and we're fresh. We want to work, but they're telling us that we can't be employed. It's annoying. Can someone do something or say something?
Hello, Cathy. The story of Congo, it's very big and very complex. You know, what Rwanda wants? Rwanda wants the DRC government have to agree, have to accept with what they want, that they must give a big portion of the Kivu region to be theirs, must belong to them. And what will happen? What they will do? They're just going to kill all those populations to make the population live there. And what does they want? They want some of their military to join the Congolese army. For what? So imagine Rwandan soldiers, as they've been there already, and they need to join the Congolese army. So they will do another coup again, kill the president, and take another Rwandan that Joseph Kabila put in power. No, that's something that the Congolese government won't agree with it. You see?
Yeah. Our troops in DRC must come back. We cannot lose more lives in the country that we don't benefit anything from. Only the politicians benefit in the Western world. Yes, they must come back as soon as possible. Otherwise, this country will close shop. They must come back. Our friends and our families are posted there, so we want them back. Anonymous, Bob. Amen.
At Business Outsurance, ensuring your business is our business. Switch to Business Outsurance today, and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. Get affordable cover to protect your business against everyday risks. Get the best business insurance at the best price for your business. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Your proposal as a means to eliminate inequality. Many may say that in fact there could be other proposals like absolutely escalating the need for schools that are struggling in terms of facilities to get the facilities they require. That would be the important issue, and get the right teachers there as well.
Why not both? And that's what they've been doing. We've escalated quality. That's why a township learner can be the best, because we've invested in that. We've escalated infrastructure. We're building new schools, better schools compared to what apartheid schools were building for us. So you can do both. But the argument here is that why divide our children if you love them? Whose children must have a better education and other children must have a better education on the basis of their financial pocket? That's wrong.
Gauteng Premier.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. All podcasts can be downloaded on safm.co.za.
#SAFM Talking Point.
Well, let's get straight into our conversation for this hour then, unpacking the cost of illegal mining to the South African economy. Last week, Mineral and Petroleum Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe put that figure at 60 billion rand. He described illegal mining as a war on South Africa's economy. Joining us for this conversation, Frans Baleni, former mine worker unionist and now somebody who spends his time advising different boards. Mr. Baleni, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Oskesi, and to your team, as well as SAFM listeners.
I guess I should also say that when it comes to mining, you really are somebody that needs little introduction. Anybody that's been in South Africa over the last decade and even longer would know exactly who you are. Peter Major, Director of Mining, Modern Corporate Solutions, joins us on the line as well. Peter, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
The Department of Minerals and Energy, Minerals and Petroleum Resources has sent its apology for not being part of this conversation, and the Mineral Council of South Africa also declining to come on to be part of this conversation. I want to firstly just set a context with reminding our listeners of what the Minister Gwede Mantashe had to say last week on this issue of illegal mining.
There can be no two ways about it. It is criminals attacking the economy. Precious metals illicit trade is estimated in 2024 to about 60 billion. That 60 billion is a leakage on the value of the economy of the country. It's a serious criminal activity.
So a figure of 60 billion rand, Mr. Baleni. Of course, we were hoping that the department would come on just to help us unpack how exactly it arrives at that figure. But does that sound about right to you?
Siskazi, I started in the mines in the 70s. I'm not sure if you were around, I doubt. On this issue of the cost associated with illegal mining, one need to put it in a context. The illegal mining is the costs are very significant, both for the industry and the country. Oskesi, it is estimated between 5 and 10% of South African chrome ore is illegally mined and exported. Now, if you add the cost associated just to keep the illegal activities at the operating mines, security, you name it, various measures and resources which are channeled, that's another cost. You add the theft of cables, copper, drag line cables, which affect the production. And therefore, the cost associated with illegal mining can be higher.
So effectively, when we talk about any figure associated or related to illegal mining, we have to look at it as a cumulative cost rather than just the cost of the product that is being extracted from underground.
Exactly, Sister. You got it.
Peter Major?
Yep, France is hitting the nail on the head. First of all, we have to ask Letty, how much gold is being taken out? Now, 60 billion rand is 37 tons of gold. Almost everybody agrees we are losing 37 tons of gold. So you can say that's being stolen, but it's being taken from underground, so it means nobody can reopen the mine and get that gold because it's been taken out. But like Franz said, look at the infrastructure, because in the old days, if a mine closed, it would be put on care and maintenance. It would wait for the metal price to go up and it could reopen. So these mines cost billions of rands. In fact, the big ones cost billions of dollars. So if you put a big mine on care and maintenance, it's still worth billions of rands in assets. But illegal miners are destroying those assets. They're stealing from them. So I think the DMR's estimate that we're losing 60 billion a year, I think that's in stolen and damaged infrastructure alone. That's not even adding in the gold that's being taken out. And you have to think, look at the corruption, because when you've got syndicates operating with 2,000 men under their watch, they're bribing police, they're bribing magistrates, they're bribing government ministers, managers. You know, look at, they were bragging up how they got the kingpin at the Stillfontein mine. He wasn't the real kingpin, he was an enforcer. He was making the guys work, deciding who got food, but look how the police let him go. So, yeah, start adding in the cost of that corruption, it's probably way more than 60 billion.
Do you think that we as South Africans have any idea, Franz, of how big a sector the mining sector is in this country? Of course, we look at the GDP figures and, we'll talk about, mining contributes between 6-7% to the country's GDP. But in real terms, do you think we understand what that practically means?
Cathy, I don't think a general person has full understanding the impact of mining. Sometimes we tend to look at the unit, the individual who's employed by the mine. You take that individual, how many people they support. You look at the hosting communities, how much are they benefiting, either directly supplying or indirectly supplying the mine. You speak about suppliers for various commodities required, for various goods required by the mine. So it's a very huge impact. That's why when you close just one shaft, the consequences of our economy in that area are very huge. Go to Velcom, go to Virginia, you name it. They become almost ghost towns.
So if the sector then is really that big and has such a significant impact on the communities where mines operate and subsequently then on the country's economy, why is it that we have seen what we are seeing now, which is almost a dereliction of duty when it comes to what should happen on some of these mines that have been closed down, the rehabilitation associated with it, and also just how syndicates have been allowed to come in and operate in the way that they do, Franz?
Look, I really blame maybe the system here, as Cathy. Firstly, when you close a mine, before that, you are given a license to operate. There are terms and conditions for each license. When you close the mine, there are conditions stipulated. How do you close the mine and how do you rehabilitate the area which you have been mining?
All right, it looks like we've lost Franz on the line.
We're experiencing. There are those ownerless mines. I beg your pardon?
Sorry, we'd lost you for a bit on the line. There seems to be a bit of a delay with your connection, but you can continue.
Okay, and then you've got those ownerless mines. Nobody owns it. The department put a very small budget to deal with those mines. So it will take years for them to cover all those ownerless mines. And then the security side, ineffective to catch the big guys of the syndicate. How can a chrome or whatever commodity gets mined illegally and exported? Clearly, they use the existing infrastructure.
What is an ownerless mine?
An ownerless mine, Sis Cathy, is a mine where the owners were left, and they have left, and they've just abandoned the mine, they're gone. The department can't trace them, can't follow them, and it becomes ownerless mine.
So who then takes responsibility for whatever's taking place on that property?
The Department of Mineral Resources and Petroleum must take responsibility.
So then surely we can't say that they are ownerless.
Because remember, in terms of the deposits below the earth, they are owned by the state, right? So there are activities which damage the environment on surface. So the departments must take responsibility of rehabilitating, because for some reasons that operation end up being ownerless.
And do you find that this is also where we'll have a high presence of illegal mining taking place?
Definitely you have a presence in those ownerless mines, including the shaft, which has been recently closed because they can detect that they are commodities. Sis Cathy, is a big syndicate. You have geologists, you've got engineer. These people don't just go underground and mine. They know exactly, and they know what grade of the ore body they need, they will find.
I'm just thinking about it, Peter. Maybe you can come in here. The idea that you would have different mines, right, where various commodities are concerned, where there's mining activity taking place, but they're described as ownerless mines, and yet they are known. Surely there needs to be a greater impetus if we are truly committed to the cost of illegal mining on the economy and what it's stealing from the economy. Surely there would need to be a greater impetus in actually either making sure that proper management is brought onto those mines, ending the illegal mining that is taking place, some sort of structure, law and order.
People in this country, especially the government, especially the ruling party, they have no idea how large and complicated these mines are. You know, this industry took 120 years to build up. It took hundreds of billions of dollars of foreign investment to build up all the various departments, institutions. And to take over this in 1994 and to get rid of as many senior managers as possible and put in cadres, and then you haven't even got to grips with this industry, and now you totally throw out a 120-year-old mining regulation handbook and you invent a brand new one and put it in. It's enormous. The mind boggles how complicated it is. Syndicates have always been out there. Illegals have always been on the mines. When I was on the mines in 81, 82, 83, 84, we were dealing with syndicates then. And it took all the efforts of the police, intelligence, military, the DMR, security on the mine management, employees. It took all 6 of those groups full-time to keep the syndicates at bay, to keep the illegals at bay. Now, you can imagine when all those get turned upside down, when the security forces are working on other things now. The police are overwhelmed with other things. The army almost doesn't exist. The ministers are all busy doing other things, and they're new and inexperienced. So that's allowed the syndicates that already had their toe in the door, they just thrust the door open, and it's a free-for-all. They control it. The syndicates control most of these abandoned mines.
Peter, are we to believe that these syndicates understand our mining landscape perhaps even better than some of our leaders and, better than those in charge?
Oh, without a doubt. As Franz said, they have the maps. They have the experienced people who worked on the mine. They know where to go. They're the most efficient miners on the planet. You know, we wish we could harness them under a legitimate management. They know all of this. And because they were working on the mines when they were still being run by an official organized company. When Neil Sonneman closed down that last Western Areas shaft, I think it was Cook shaft, they had 4,500 employees. And as Sibanya told us, out of those 4,500 people, 1,500 weren't even official employees. A third of the people catching the shaft cage and going down, they were working for themselves. And then another 1,500 of the employees, another third, they were officially working for Sibanya, but they were assisting those illegal miners. So he said, even though the gold price is very high, I'm still losing money on this because only a third of my workforce is working for me. The other third is helping the first third that's totally illegal. So they were able to infiltrate a registered, listed company because the environment has changed so dramatically.
Franz, I want to stay with this issue that Pete has touched on, because often one gets the sense that there is a symbiotic relationship between illegal mining and your formal mining processes. And as people that have been in the industry and have the inside knowledge, perhaps you'll help explain it to us ordinary members of the public. It seems to me impossible that you would have a legal mining operation taking place and right on the same property you have illegal mining taking place in a different shaft just off the back of that. And the legal company says, no, this has nothing to do with us. We don't know what's happening there. How does that even arise?
This, Cathy, this happened. We've seen it. We've got all the evidence in front of us. You've got some of the workers who are cooperating with these illegal players because they get paid, obviously. And then you've got those who are forced. Let me give an example. There is an engine driver in a particular mine. The guys approach him and say, we know your wife. We know your kids that go into the school. These are their names. We've got your account number. We have just deposited 300,000. On Sunday, we're going under. We want our goods to go underground, cooperate with us. He has now no choice, right? He's in their payroll, forcefully so. And you will have drums. You would think when you see those drums, they are oil drums. They are sealed, properly sealed, as if it's oil drum. They are marked. There's food, tin stuff, you name it, in those drums. And then they go underground. So clearly you can see that there's serious cooperation. There are those who actually provide, unfortunately, female workers who provide sexual activities to these mine workers. A session costing between 3,000 and 5,000 rand. We've seen that. There's evidence.
We're going to continue with this conversation shortly. So much for us to continue to unpack. We're looking at illegal mining and the cost to the South African economy. The general sense so far that even that 60 billion rand that was used by Minister Gwede Mantashe could well be an underestimation of how much the South African economy is losing to this activity. We'll continue the conversation with Franz Baleni, Peter Major in a moment. Now it's 10:30. Time for your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. The news headlines on SAFM. I am Ondolambana and a very good morning. The High Court in Johannesburg has started to hear the challenge of former President Jacob Zuma and the Umkhonto weSizwe Party against the SABC. Traditional healer Makgotso Gogo Maweni Mofokeng is today expected to appear in the Protea Magistrate Court in Soweto, Johannesburg for bail application. And a senior Umkhonto weSizwe Party member, Mary Padi, has accused the party's Deputy President John Hlophe of sexual harassment. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 56 to the dollar, 23 rand 10 to the pound, and 19 rand 43 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mixed at the closing bell. The JSE mainly weekend mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe have extended losses. Gold's trading at $2,752, platinum $937 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $78.08 a barrel.
Call us on 086 000 2032. #SAFM Talking Point.
You're listening to The Talking Point. We're diving deep when it comes to the illegal mining issue. I'll also take your calls and contributions to this conversation on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Franz Baleni, former mine worker unionist, is part of our conversation this morning. So is Peter Major, Director of Mining Modern Corporate Solutions. Mr. Baleni, before we went to that break, you were basically detailing for us just some of the activity that is taking place, and I was asking you about the extent to which those that are running the official operations can distance themselves. I hear you on the coercion, right? And again, if you're an individual who's caught up in that situation, it really can be very difficult. It doesn't leave you with no options, but certainly leaves you with very little options in terms of what to do. I'm still not convinced, though, that it can happen without the knowledge of the companies that are running the formal mining operations.
Oscar, this happen all the time, and the mines would know about these legal activities. Hence, I was saying earlier on, there is so much resources channeled in trying to keep these illegal operators at bay. Now, if there is collaboration between employees and the illegal operators, it becomes very, very difficult. Now, if you are saying there's a shaft nearby, it depends who owns that shaft in the first place. If it's the same mine with the operating mine and a closed shaft, that is fully of the mine owner, even if it's a closed shaft, to take responsibility. That's why even during care and maintenance, they employ a large number of security personnel to protect that mine, to prevent illegal operators penetrating that shaft.
Peter, it's not unheard of in this country to have illegal mining taking place, even in areas where there are security guards that have been employed to look after, particular mining activities. Explain it for me, Peter, your own understanding again of where the linkages are between the formal and the informal, and how does that feed into this broader, the syndicates that are operating in the industry?
Look, I think because there's so many syndicates, there's so many gaps. This was arguably the largest mining country on the planet for decades and decades. We had almost every mineral known to man, so we had a mine for almost every mineral. And if you go to the chrome mines, I visited chrome mines where the mine manager points on the hill. He says, Pete, that's totally illegal up on the hill. Do you see the excavators? They got more excavators than I do. They said they have dump trucks. They have weigh stations. They're weighing the trucks. They're doing this officially. They're driving to Mozambique with those illegal trucks. So some of these illegals are very organized on the surface. They're doing the chrome mining. Many of them are running coal mines. And some of these coal mines are totally illegal, and they're large. Now, on the gold mines, I'm told it's the Lesotho syndicates, the Mozambican syndicates, because that's where most our foreign miners came from. And they were probably the most experienced, competent miners. The Mozambicans were team leaders. They were sought after as team leaders. And the Lesothans, they were hardcore shaft sinkers, development. So you've got different syndicates. Even if you wipe out one, you're surrounded by probably 100 others. And because they know the mines, they know mining, and now they know who to sell it to, And yes, Gwetty's right when he says they're selling it at a discount. They're taking our assets, our minerals, and they're selling them at discounts. They're destroying the environment, terrorizing people, corrupting our law enforcement officers. Oh, the list just goes on and on. A Pandora's box was opened, unfortunately, here in the late 80s, 90s, and new millennium. And government doesn't know how to put it back in. It's too big. It was like fall of the Iron Curtain. When that went down, all the security services of the Soviet Union that had monitored and kept tabs, the syndicates just overran it.
So part of what that means, Peter, is that then we as a country also can't claim to entirely be the victims of this activity. The example that you've given around chrome mining and how organized it is, it takes place in broad daylight. In order for these vehicles to be able to take that product across the border, it's not simple. If I try to do that, it would be practically impossible. So that suggests that there's a lot more at play than perhaps we would like to acknowledge.
Oh, it's not possible. You could do it today, but you better have some money in your wallet. Yeah, you can't go there with no money. You know, money's the common language. It unites all people, languages, cultures, creeds, nationalities. It's the binding factor.
So money to pay off people at the border?
Yes, that's right. Everybody has to get a cut. As long as everybody gets a cut, they're happy to keep the status quo as it is.
Franz, given the fact that, at least by Peter's account, we have some kind of idea of where these minerals are ending up, what do we need to do about it? Because the conversation now is really around solutions. What are the solutions that can be put in place to reduce, if not eradicate, illegal mining in the country? One thinks about even the deployment of soldiers, right? At some point we had soldiers deployed to try and deal with the syndicates. There were progress reports, I think, here and there, but not really much concrete in terms of what they had been able to do.
Cathy, clearly there's a need to step up the efforts of the security cluster, and you need a combination of all the elements of the security cluster: the intelligence, the police, the army, crime intelligence, and you name it. Because unless you arrest few of these kingpins, we will still talking about the troopers, which Peter referred to from the neighboring countries. These are just troopers. You have big syndicates. Our commodities ended up in ship to leave South Africa, or by air or by road. So clearly they use our infrastructure. So unless the security cluster are more effective and get to the kingpins, we won't make progress.
If I can offer a partial solution, but I think a big solution. Where did this problem come from? It came from when we changed our legislation and policy in this country to drive out investment. It drove out foreign investment, and it drove out local investment in mining. It's like our mining legislation was tailored to chase away any potential foreign investment. We nationalized the mines 10 years after we said we would never nationalize them. We knew that was going to be a disaster. We've seen it north of us. So we took away the mineral rights from all the established mining companies. But that wasn't enough. Then we put all kinds of terms and conditions. If you do want to mine, you're going to have to fulfill all these terms and conditions. Well, you don't have to start with those terms and conditions. It's chased away every investment buck. So as we chased away legitimate money, our legislation seemed designed to bring in the syndicates, because now there was no legitimate money to run a legitimate mine. So the mines all closed. So you would swear the people that wrote our mining legislation and policy were working for the syndicates. So in the last 30 years, we have made it very, very attractive for syndicates and illegals to come run the mines, and we have made it very, very unattractive for any investment. Even the locals don't want to invest here. The foreigners definitely don't. So if we don't turn those two factors around, if we don't get foreign investment in these mines, they're not going to pay taxes. They're going to keep closing. We're going to have higher unemployment, more desperate people, and we're going to have more illegal mining. If we could just turn our policies around, starting with examples like Zambia and the DRC, once they threw out the bums and all that bad legislation of 30 years from 1970 to 2000, they put in new legislation. Tens of billions of dollars have flown in those countries from foreign investors. And that money is still pouring in by the billions of dollars. So just changing our legislation properly would make a huge, huge difference. It would create jobs, bring in foreign investment, and that would allow the police and authorities to get a hold on some of these mines.
Franz, I know you want to come in there. Yeah, sure, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, well, I've been agreeing with Peter all this morning. I differ with him when he refers to the MPDRA, which was purposes of transforming the industry, which was a white male-dominated industry. And therefore, you can't blame the legislation. There's nothing wrong with legislation in terms of transformation. I like this transformation, Ms. Cathy, when it is said in Afrikaans. I know your Afrikaans is not good, but they call it rechtstellende actie. In other words, corrective measures. So we're restoring what belongs to the people. So to say that the mineral belongs to the people as a whole, it's wrong. I can't agree with that.
The point that he's making is that it has made it less attractive for investors to come on board, and the terms and conditions attached to it have opened room. They have created the ecosystem that we find ourselves in today.
Well, I disagree, Oskathy. There's a weakness in terms of enforcement of the law. If, for example, a failure of department to process licensing and they're piling up, that's not the weakness of the law. It is inefficiency in a department. It means that a minister must be removed, put an effective minister, or staff members must be fired. It has nothing to do with legislation.
I want to go to our listeners, bring in their perspective now. Anonymous, you're calling us from Kempton Park. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your guests. I'm going to try and be brief. Just a comment on this investor scarecrow. And I call it that because every time we're supposed to legislate for our benefit as South Africans, it gets pulled out of the hat. Investors have various levels of tolerance to risk. So if Cathy doesn't like the risk that's brought in by certain legislative changes, I will be too happy to step in and take my chances and invest in the same space. However, the question I wanted to put through, and I think Honorable Baleni mentioned that there is not enough money to be, to cover the cost of these rehabilitation. Now, the South African leadership is not creative enough. If people are mining and they're making money out of these mines that we need to shut down, but we don't have enough money to spend to shut these mines down, it's mind-boggling how we don't, indulge in a short-term project, use the resources in those mines to fund a program to shut those mines. So sometimes when we are faced with a problem in South Africa, we don't get to a solution because as a leader, I look at it and say, how will I personally benefit? And for the mere fact that I don't see how I'll benefit, my mind is then shut down to any form of solutions. But thank you to your both guests. They providing very much valuable information. Thank you, Cathy.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that contribution, Anonymous. Calls for a need for more creative solutions. Warren, you're out in the Eastern Cape. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and thank you very much for taking up what I spoke to you about on Friday about. And I'm glad the government hasn't come on board, and I'll tell you why. Because they are somehow just reluctant. But not only that, they just, I don't know. Mr. Major's quite right. I worked for De Beers many years ago in the diamond sector, okay, prospecting, the Macqualand. And I know what was going on there. And it is quite funny what's going on there now, because Plains is closed, but that's another thing. Thank you very much for just opening South Africa's eyes, but this has to be opened a lot more. This is a Pandora's box, a can of worms, and big people involved. Who, by the way, is Cyril Ramaphosa's brother-in-law. He's a gentleman that runs Rainbow Minerals. Yes. He's the big boy.
So, Warren, when it comes to your own experience around the time that you were in the sector and what you saw in as far as illegal mining activities concerned and the syndicates that operated at the time, what can you tell us today about your own observations in terms of what you are seeing and perhaps where the gaps are?
Let me just clarify something, please. What I did with De Beers was I was about 60 years ago. I'm 81. It was 60 years ago, all right? So I was involved with them for about 4 years. But what was happening was that, just as an example, okay, just as an example, because I've been out of the business and been in involvement with mining since the mid-1960s. All right, I've gone on a totally different trajectory. However, what I can only say is, it's plain here at the moment, all right, because I worked at Dreyersplain, which was up the road on the prospecting and Langwachter. It claims here at the moment, there are illegal miners knowing what to do to recover diamonds. But they are it's such small diamonds because all the main ore bodies, like at Conyas, have been mined out. If you could see from the air, when you fly up the west coast, all right, the destruction that has been wrought, and no mine rehabilitation will ever fix it. You can see open areas, kilometers and kilometers of just mining bodies, and this is open. This is not closed up. This is open to the air. And you can see where they've dug out tons and tons of gravels to win the diamonds. Now I'm talking about the diamonds, not about the gold so much, because the gold I haven't any experience of. But the diamonds, you have to take out literally tons and tons of gravel to win the diamonds or get the diamonds out. And it's quite a big process and a very expensive process.
Okay, all right. Warren in the Eastern Cape, thanks for that perspective. And as you're saying, it has been quite some time since you were last in the industry. Colbert, you're in Masisi Village. Good morning.
Thank you, Cathy. Are you?
Good, Colbert. Go for it.
Yes, the problem of illegal mining is not going to end. As long as there are some other organizations who are defending those illegal miners. Because if you look, you will find that the majority of these illegal miners are the illegal foreigners, which means they are taking our minerals away to sell there outside the country. And this finance is going to boost their countries. But you find some honorable South Africans, some big names of some respected people descending to illegal miners. This brings to mind to me that there are some benefits there. There are some people who are benefiting there secretly, even though we don't know. But I'm telling you, Sasket.
Colbert, part of me feels that after a conversation like this, even whatever benefit that individuals, may be deriving out of defending the miners, that is at the very end of the food chain, and clearly marginal compared to what some of the monies that those that are running the industry actually are.
Yes. How can we, a sort of organization, defend for some people who are foreigners mining into our country, taking some minerals away? As he or she knows that there's nothing a South African is benefiting there. You see, this is the man of the revenue of our country. Our country is losing money of developing, building roads, building houses, and etc. You see, our daily lives are collapsing.
Colbert, let's leave it there. Anonymous, you're in Somerset West. Good morning.
Oh, hi. 2 points. 25 years ago in the Business Times, there was a huge article about how our copper was going illegally to China. They were just stealing the copper at this end, and huge trucks were going over the Mozambican border off to China. Now China has the greatest supply of copper in the whole world, illegally got from us at no cost. And the second point is that this is what's happening to the coal in Andre de Ruyter's Truth to Power book. I mean, they were willing to poison his coffee and get rid of him because he told the truth, and nobody's speaking about the book. They take the coal on the weighbridge, they weigh it, I think it was something like 18 times, and then it passes through, and we don't get any of that coal. They come back the next day with it. But, this African, he was so brave, because he had a tip-off on there, they chased the guy, and he didn't have a gun, and they actually got it back. They found that we paid 18 times for this coal, and the problem with Eskom is everything is sampled by hand, and nothing is on computer. And I want to tell you, we are missing in this country 3 to 5 trillion rand that's been stolen, and it all goes to the very, very top.
Okay.
Look at the top of the ANC. Thank you. Bye.
Anonymous in Somerset West. Yeah, that's Anonymous' view there. And you heard at least some of the figures that she's apportioning to it. Those are not figures that have been fact-checked, but I think she used it more to make her point. Kandisa in Matlosana.
Morning, Cathy. How are you? Cathy?
Yes, Kandisa, go for it.
Good. Cathy, I understand whatever your guests are saying there. But they don't address issue of for people who are in the mining area. Because these mines, as we stay here in Stilfontein now, we are at risk now. The geologist says that this town of Kuma and other areas around this mining area, they are dolomite. And you get underground there. There is water that is flowing there. And you ask what happened in Carltonville, I don't know if it was 3 years back, where people of Carltonville had a disaster there because of mines. Now, I want to know from Tate Paleni, because Tate Paleni used to come here when the mine were operating as union, to say what we should do as people of mining area, because these mines, they didn't do anything for our people here, especially here in Kuma. The mine people who are working in the mines here are suffering. Others, they have silicosis. There were money that they were supposed to get from, I don't know if the Department of DMR or Health. Even today, those people are still suffering.
Okay.
Yes. Now, what I wanted to know, what we should do, because we are in a dolomite area, and then this township cannot be developed anymore.
Okay, thanks for that call. We've noted that question there. Franz, do you want to go first?
Thanks, Cathy, and thanks, Kandisa. I think what's important on your question, Kandisa, is to approach the municipality because they can engage the relevant authorities in order to address the issue of the dolomite because it can be very dangerous. Insofar as silicosis is concerned, there is a trust which has been established through the claim process. Please apply through that trust so that if anybody qualifies, can get compensation. I thank you.
Peter, do you want to respond to any issue raised by our listeners before we get ready to round up this conversation?
No, I think this is a big subject. We could go on for a long time, but we've covered the important parts here. It's just sad that we had to put all these people out of work, and we're in the greatest commodity boom the world has ever seen. And every country I know on the planet is increasing its gold production every year, and ours is decreasing. And we still have half the world's known gold. So we need some big changes in policies if we're going to turn this around. It can't be done on the ground. The average policeman, he can't do much. It's sad.
You're bringing me to my final question to both of you then. It's really where to from here, given the entire context that our country finds itself in. How do we prevent a situation that in 12 months, in 24 months' time, we're still talking about operations to retrieve illegal miners, going around in circles over the same issue? How do we begin to almost break the cycle that we've been caught up in and begin to create a different and an alternative pathway for the country when it comes to the mining sector? France?
Cathy, as I said earlier on, I think we need to strengthen the security cluster. There should be a specialized team working around this mine, which is ethically upright, so that there's no room for bribery. The DMR must play its role insofar as enforcement of the law and compliance with the licenses.
You also spoke about the inefficiency of the department, right? and a need for efficient leadership in the department.
Yes, indeed. Unless that is resolved, we will then have the problem which Peter raised about investment challenges.
Is the minister the right person for the job?
Look, Sister, I would make that call, but I'm saying whoever appoints a minister, if a minister is not appointing, that minister must be removed.
Whoever appoints the minister, if the minister is not what?
If the minister is not performing, that minister must be removed.
Must the minister be removed? Gwede Mantashe, must he be removed in particular?
I didn't say that, but I'm just saying the one who appoints, if he assesses an individual not performing, that person must be removed. I've not done the assessment of Gwede.
Franz, I'm going to let you out of that corner that I've put you in. Peter?
This thing is too big. We're standing at the base of an enormous dam that's flooding down on us. The world is starving for commodities. As long as those prices are high, people are going to flock to this country. But it's the wrong people. It's the syndicates and the illegals flocking here to get our minerals because we're not mining them. We chased away all investment. And that's also resulted, we have 35% unemployment. So all these starving, hungry, experienced people, we're forcing them into crime. How do we think 35% of these, how do they stay alive? It's through crime, and it's risky things they're doing. So what did we change in the last 20, 30 years that drove away all this investment and has attracted bad investment? China. They had nothing but foreign investment plowing in there for 30 years. Last year, for the first time, they had some money go out of China. More money went out than came in. Do you know what the premier did? He got on an airplane. He flew to San Francisco. He had meetings with every hedge fund manager he could find. This is the top of China. He says, I don't want you guys disinvesting. I want you to keep investing. He took action, and he took action fast. We've had disinvestment for 30 years, and we're not flying over and saying, guys, what do we need to do? What do we need to change here to bring you back? We're just ignoring it.
Peter, thank you for your contribution. Certainly making very compelling arguments in as far as some of the positions you've put on the table this morning. That's where we leave it on this particular conversation. Thank you for all of your contributions. It's 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Cathy. Top stories at 11. Court hears MK Party challenge against the SABC and Joburg City Power against Eskom's proposed retail tariff plan. For SAFM News, I am Onde Lambana and a very good morning. The High Court in Johannesburg has started to hear the challenge of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party against the SABC. The party has approached the court to stop the public broadcaster from referring to the 7th administration as a government of national unity. In August last year, the matter was struck off the roll for a lack of urgency. Party leader Jacob Zuma wants the court to declare the SABC's use of GNU unconstitutional. A senior Umkhonto weSizwe Party member, Mary Padi, has accused the party's deputy president, John Hlophe, of sexual harassment. Padi claims Hlophe invited her to his hotel room with the intent of having sexual relations after a leadership meeting in Bombela last year. Padi has reportedly detailed allegations in a letter to MK Party President Jacob Zuma. She elaborates.
He must be suspended as such, and then from there they investigate the matter. If you are claiming to be the member of Umkhonto weSizwe, same with myself, because I'm now the convener of the province, but I had to go through the legal processes because of the way I've been treated unfairly, and the court has granted me an opportunity to be able to lead fairly because the internal processes were not followed. I think in this case, he must be suspended as well, and then internal processes or this matter must be looked at it very seriously.
Johannesburg City Power has expressed strong opposition to Eskom's recent proposal to adjust its tariff structure. It includes a tariff increase and a shift in how electricity usage is calculated. Eskom's request to the National Energy Regulator of South Africa seeks approval for a new tariff system, including altering peak hour pricing. City Power says it's concerned about the impact these changes could have on consumers, especially when combined with Eskom's proposed 36.15% tariff hike for the 2025-2026 financial year. Frank Hinda is the General Manager for Tariffing at City Power.
Different customers will be affected differently depending on the structural change. For example, they are proposing to increase the summer tariffs and reduce the winter tariffs. So in that case, the summer tariffs would be, you're looking at an extra 10% in top of what NERSA would approve. They are also proposing things like legacy charts that not clear in terms of what, because the methodology doesn't seem to provide for a legacy charge. Yet they want a tariff that it should be catering for that. And that could then eventually result in additional cost to the customer.
There are reports of heavy artillery hitting the center of the town of Goma in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. This follows a mass escape from a prison. Unverified videos being shared online appear to show prisoners fleeing. The M23 rebels say they have taken over control of the town. This comes a few days after 13 soldiers, including 9 South Africans, were killed in fierce fighting with the rebels. The U.S. Air Force says it will resume using videos of the country's first black airmen and pioneering civilian female pilots after their suspension caused outrage. The pause was introduced to ensure that the videos complied with President Trump's ban on diversity, equity and inclusion initiatives. The BBC's Andrew Chiang has the details.
The Tuskegee Airmen included 450 pilots who fought overseas in segregated units during World War II. The women Air Force Service pilots, or WASPs, were vital in ferrying warplanes for the military. U.S. media have reported that the videos themselves may not have been the problem, but they had been included in diversity courses for military training. One Republican Senator, Katie Boyd of Alabama, called the suspension of their use malicious compliance. She said the history and the lessons of the Tuskegee Airmen will continue to be taught because they had a legacy of excellence, success and unquestionable merit. The U.S. Air Force now says all trainees will watch the videos.
Recapping the top story, the High Court in Johannesburg has started to hear the challenge of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party against the SABC. The party has approached the court to stop the public broadcaster from referring to the 7th administration as a government of national unity. I am Onde Lambana for SFM News Headlines at 11:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments. They make a difference.
Life is too short for long-term grudges, but when it's the Soweto Derby, hey Amadota, I pay. Black and white confronts gold and black. The Buccaneers believe Yonkindao, Iparapaga, Yaphumelela. While Amakhosi still emphasize Ikosi, Alpelo Moya. Experience Mzansi's biggest football rivalry, Orlando Pirates versus Kaizer Chiefs, on Saturday, 1 February at 2 p.m. live on SABC 1 and at 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Hey, this is Cathy and all SAFM listeners. Good morning. I'm just wondering on this issue of illegal mining in South Africa, whether are we trying to shift the blame? In this instance, there is a problem with the sealing of the mines, whose responsibility is the Department of Minerals. And on the other hand, we are also ignoring the fact that there is some kind of human trafficking in this country, and there are people that are taking people to mine illegally without their voluntarily agreement. So this is Andile from Stegspruit in the Eastern Cape, near to borders.
Cathy, good morning. This is Mzwandile in Port Elizabeth. I've just got a question. So the mines which have been decommissioned, why don't we then regulate and convert these illegal miners into artisanries, meaning that they would get private licenses to then go and operate there in a safe and regulated environment? What this is seeking to say to us, it is saying it's almost like if you've got farmland that is unoccupied, that is not used, you as the person who can farm, you are being told, no, you can't use that piece of land for your own production. Yet the owner of that land is sitting somewhere in Australia, in New Zealand, in Britain, in Europe. So what I'm saying is, if the mine is not used, it's decommissioned, let's find ways then to allow artisanries as long as they are regulated.
Hi, it's just Cathy. Listening to your conversation on your show, this is scary, man. This is very, very, very scary. To this mining, I'm listening to the mining program you just have on. It's scary how these guys literate to us that how deep this thing going, and that you can almost say that the government can do nothing about it. This is the same with the law enforcement, the police, and now our army, and now this. Hey, South Africa, we need to worry. We really need to worry. Our enforcement teams need to be really looked at, put into budget. But this thing is scary they talk about. I'm scared, man. Thanks, Peter, out in George.
Good day, Cathy. I think regarding the mining situation, I think South Africans have to stop thinking about themselves as being the exception, you know. Yes, we live in a unique society where there's inequality, but the measures that we've taken to adopt a racialized policy from the past is astounding, you know. The idea that you can correct things by applying the same racial policy has been a disaster all over the world. But we're not learning that because we don't want to, because there are certain interests involved, which are black middle class interests, okay? Not about sharing wealth, essentially. And that's where the ruling party and the trade unions are completely deluded and losing it. And they don't want to see the truth.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right. Well, thank you for all your contributions to our conversation in the 10 o'clock hour. Absolutely. Compelling arguments, I believe, on both sides. And I think when we're dealing with a sector that has clearly overwhelmed the officials of the day, then you do need all options on the table as potential solutions, because we can't afford a situation where South Africa is losing out so much to illegal mining, but also look at the impact that it is having on our society. And you heard what both Frans and Peter said, that these individuals are not going anywhere. Why? Because the mineral deposits are sitting in this country. So there's nothing that we can do to actually get rid of them, because they are here because of what they know is underground. So we then have to come up with different and better solutions to this particular problem. But that's where we leave it for today on the subject of illegal mining. We'll now turn our attention to a ruling in the North Gauteng High Court that was around the 2023 regulations governing the 370 COVID-19 Social Relief of Distress Grant. They have been found to be unconstitutional and invalid, and some of those will unpack exactly which aspects of those rules they have found to be unconstitutional. Joining us for this conversation is Siyanda Baduza, who is a basic income researcher at the IEJ. Siyanda, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
And Elizabeth Reiters is the deputy chair of #PayTheGrants. Elizabeth, good morning.
Good morning, Kathy, and good morning to the listeners.
Of course, and the Department of Social Development has said that it is studying that particular judgment and not ready yet to be offering up its own comments. Siyanda, if we can go back to the establishment of the Social Relief of Distress Grant, it's literally in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and on a day-to-day basis, as a country, we're dealing with the impact of the lockdowns on South Africans' ability to provide for themselves. But what it did do, of course, is that it fed into a conversation that had already been started at the time, and it was around the need for a basic income grant for South Africans, given how many people sit in that unemployment bracket and simply don't have a way of creating a means and a livelihood for themselves. It's 2025. We're here now. We're told that you would have, at any given point, if I point to some of the stats last year, over 11 people applying to access this SRD grant. The department says it only has so much money, which is part of the reason why it has formulated this criteria in the way that it has in the first place. Why was it important for this matter to actually be challenged before the courts? These rules and regulations, why did they need to end up before the courts in your view?
So I think starting from the conditions that necessitated the SRD grant. So before the introduction of the SRD grant in 2020, I think it had long been argued and established that South Africa had a glaring gap in its social protection system. So we had, and we still do have now, the child support grant, for example, for children under the age of 18, and we have the old age pension. But there was a glaring gap for the age groups between 18 and 59. which the COVID-19 pandemic definitely did expose, because the only people who had any types of protections were those who were in employment, because there they had access to the UIF scheme, like contributory modes of social assistance. So those are the conditions that necessitated, like desperately, the SRD grant. But the need for it didn't stem from there. And then moving on from there, from 2020, since its introduction, there was a set of new regulations that were introduced in April of 2022. So this was when the grant was moved out of disaster management into the Social Assistance Act. And this came with a number of regulations that didn't exist prior to April 2022. And what you see is, when you look at the data, it tells a very simple story. So in April of 2022, you have almost, I think, 16 million applications. You have almost 11 million people being approved in that month, in March 2022, which was the peak of the grant. To the very next month, with the introduction of the grant, those numbers falling to less than half. So those approvals going from around 11 million to, I think, just around 5. Even the applications drastically falling. And this wasn't, and this decrease in these numbers didn't come from the fact that there was some improvement in the economic conditions for people that magically happened in April 2022, because we know unemployment levels are similar to what they were even during the pandemic, like stands for like the level 1 lockdown, but post that, unemployment levels still incredibly high. They're also incredibly high before COVID. So that the conditions, the bad economic conditions that people are living under was still very present. So the numbers were falling, not because the number of people in need was decreasing, but it was because there were this new criteria, these new instruments that were being used to evaluate people. They were purposefully like excluding people, and so that was the basis for the court case. In that, even if you do have like budget issues, right? You can't create a policy or criteria with the purpose of deliberately excluding people who should be forming part of your like criteria. So if a government introduces a policy and they define need, and in terms of this policy, which they did, they said anyone who's earning under 624 is needy and in need of the support, you can't then go and create other means and measures to purposefully keep people away from being able to access that, because that doesn't just keep away the people who are say more privileged. Also, and I think the data that we have and the experiences, which I'm sure Elizabeth can tell you more about as well, is that it ends up excluding those who are the needier. So things like online only applications discriminate those who are the absolute poorest because they don't have access to smartphones or internet access, or they don't have good digital literacy skills, for example. So that was where the challenge mainly came through. It's you can't create these other ways to exclude people once you've defined who should be part of that population. Like the budgeting should happen on the basis of who should be qualifying, or estimates on how many should be qualifying, not arbitrarily defined, and then in retrospect create measures to exclude people.
Elizabeth, if we are to go back again to when exactly these payments came into play, how much of the structure in terms of including, partly the rules and the regulations, I'm hearing Sianda talk about, the online applications that are being made, how much of it was necessitated also by the period under which this was developed, and perhaps it was a question of the department going back to review how it's implementing the SRD grant post-COVID, post the relaxation of all of those lockdown measures that we had at the time? Elizabeth, I don't have a clear line to you. I'm going to try and see if we can't call you back to bring you up on a different line. Unfortunately, I really can't hear you clearly there. And Elizabeth is with the paid the grants. But Sianda, perhaps the same question to you. Is there an acknowledgement from your end around the fact that the product we have today could very well be a product of its circumstance, which was COVID-19, and that maybe one of the big challenges is that there just has been no re-looking at how to re-engineer it post the pandemic.
I mean, yeah, I think absolutely. So I think it was the SRD grant was a massive achievement on behalf of government, because, especially at its inception, because it was announced I'm not sure I think May 2020, and it was already being rolled out immediately after, which very impressive. And a lot of the things like the online only system, for example, were like part of a way in order to very quickly roll it out to a number of people. That, I think, is definitely true. But some of the regulations that came in 2022 were also not part of the initial design of the grant in 2020. So things like, for example, even on online payments, online applications, for example, there were in-person payments that were happening in 2020, for example, where people could conduct their affairs at SASSA offices, for example. The income bank verification system, the automated one that directly tracks someone's all inflows into someone's bank account and defines that as income, that also wasn't a part of the system in 2020. In 2020, the way it worked, the criteria was very simply defined that it is based on unemployment. There were no income assessments. It was just checked that someone wasn't employed or receiving any other form of government support, and then those checks would only happen on appeal. So a lot of the measures that were challenging weren't actually even part of the design in 2020. They came with the implementation of the new regulations in 2022. But I think even then, it's which we can accept that some were perhaps necessitated by the circumstances. They definitely had to then be like moving on forward. There had to be a re-looking at those, because they're still administered very differently from other grants, which shows us that these things can happen. Like the child support grant system has many more like applicants and many more recipients than the SRD grant. But for example, they have things like people being able to conduct their affairs in person. So that isn't an impossible ask. It's the way the other grants are governed. And that's part of what was a big argument for us, was that there was this irrational differentiation between the SRD grant and the other grants. And there are things that you could allow that wouldn't lead to the collapse of the system. So for online only applications, allow people who don't have the means or the ability to apply online, allow them to conduct their affairs in person, which is something that happens for all the other grants too.
All right. Thanks for that, Sianda. Elizabeth, let me bring you back into the conversation. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
I can hear you, Cathy. Can you hear me?
Much better. The line is a lot better now. Thank you so much. Again, maybe before I build on the conversation with you, let me give you a chance to speak to the nature of the products that we have ended up with. How much of that was a result of it being developed under COVID, and how much of that has also come as a result of the narrowing down of wanting to really limit numbers in terms of who can access this grant?
Okay, Cathy, when it was developed during COVID, it was because people had no income at all because they were not working, and some companies were not paying these people their salaries. So this is when the COVID SRD actually came into play. But I can tell you, in the last few years, it is drastically decreased of the amount of people that actually have access to the grant. As you know, some of these people actually lost their jobs totally during COVID. So they didn't go back to work, so they had no income. And this is where the issue started happening, because these beneficiaries will then be declined for UIF registered. And you will find out the UIF money has been drawn already. They only get payments maybe for 6 months, but for the next 2-3 years, they'll still be declined for UIF registered. So I also think why a lot of people are not applying for the SRD anymore is because beneficiaries have lost hope. They've lost hope in the system because of all this regulation that's actually excluding them. Every month, SASSA finds a new way to exclude beneficiaries, We currently sitting where SASSA implemented identification verification and blocked beneficiaries to do identification verification, but their system has been down for nearly a month. So for the past month, no person could actually identify themselves, which means these poor people will not get paid this month. And this is the thing about SASSA, they always find a way to exclude beneficiaries.
It's one thing being able to challenge government on its policy and win, as you have done in this instance. Of course, we don't know whether SASSA is going to be appealing this matter and how much further it's still going to go. There is, of course, the other question that we have to deal with, which is one that says, what happens in as far as the implementation of policy? Sianda, what we know is that SASSA has been battling, just like all other departments, when it comes to the allocations it receives from National Treasury. And they have been complaining about the fact that they simply don't have enough money to do what they're supposed to do. What does that mean then in the context of this judgment, and how far realistically can a judgment like this go?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because it definitely is. So that's part of why SASSA implemented a lot of these regulations, and also what they've been arguing. So what's been the case is that the allocation that SASSA receives from National Treasury hasn't been based in any objective assessment of the number of people who should be qualifying for the grant. It's essentially National Treasury picked a number, and then SASSA had to create these regulations, or maybe enforce some more strictly, even unfairly, which I think that they admit to in their papers and also in court, which in order to get the numbers down. And what's been happening is, so Treasury picks a number, SASSA has to implement these measures, and they've been overperforming in excluding people, which has led to them underspending on the grant for the last 3 years. I think they also underspent in the previous financial year, which is then used as a basis for National Treasury to cut the allocation to the grant even further. And a nice thing about this case is that National Treasury, or the Minister of Finance, applied to also be a respondent in the case. So they were also a part of it. It wasn't just SASSA and DSD, it was also National Treasury. And I think an important finding that the court found, or in the ruling, is that National Treasury has been encroaching on the terrain of the Minister of Social Development. So it's there through those allocations, but also they've been trying to dictate what the policy on social development should be, and that is a responsibility that lies purely with the department, not with National Treasury. So I think that's important. I think that's going to have implications moving forward. But I think also in terms of allocations, an important thing there is that the allocations to specific social policy have to be based in assessments of need and assessments of what true eligibility rates should be, instead of being arbitrarily determined. So an important point there is, even in the court case and in their papers, which we challenged, is National Treasury will simply say, for example, this increase is impossible. It would completely collapse the system. They don't base this in any type of calculations. They don't provide any proof for that assessment. That's simply a claim that they advance, which I think even the judge found that wasn't enough. There needs to be sufficient proof as to why maybe the resources aren't available. And another important part there was that the increase in the SRD grant that came last year in April came in the midst of the court challenge, where National Treasury in their papers had argued that any type of increase of the SRD grant would be impossible. It would lead to a collapse of the system, but yet still went and implemented a 20 Rand increase that wasn't in the budget for last year. So it came out of...
Sorry, Sianda, I'm going to pause you there. We'll continue with you in a moment. It's 11:30, time for your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headline, Senior Counsel Advocate Dalim Mpofu has argued that the case against the SABC's use of the term Government of National Unity has nothing to do with the censorship. A senior Umkhonto weSizwe party member, Mary Padi, has accused the party's deputy president, John Hlophe, of sexual harassment, and flights are expected to be disrupted at George Airport in the Western Cape today due to severe inclement weather conditions. The air traffic and navigation services says the unsafe conditions include strong winds. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
All SASA Gold cards will stop working on the 28th of February 2025. Replace yours today with the new Postbank Black Card at no cost. Join hundreds of thousands of grant beneficiaries already receiving their grants on their new Postbank Black Cards. For your convenience, you can collect your card at multiple locations nationwide. Card replacement points are at selected ShopRite Checkers, Pick n Pay and Boxer stores. To find a location near you, dial *120 *218 *3 hash. Don't wait. Upgrade your card today for free. Trusted by millions for 150 years. Postbank, your bank.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're looking at the court ruling which took place last week, marked as a victory for social protection. And we had two agencies, the IEJ and the Pay the Grants, #Pay the Grants, taking the matter before the court and challenging the legislation or the criteria that is being used to determine who should actually receive the social relief of distress grant. Sianda Baduza is with the IEJ. He's a basic income researcher, and Elizabeth Raitis is the deputy chair of #Pay the Grants. Sianda, let me give you a chance then just to conclude because I did cut you off as we went into news.
Right, but I think I was almost at the end. I think it's just that the finding is that, or the argument is, which I think that our lawyers made very eloquently, is that in as much as National Treasury does play a role in budgeting and managing public finances, they can't take on the role of setting government policy. That falls to the departments and that falls to Parliament. So we live in a constitutional supremacy, not a fiscal one. So it can't just be that these measures or like constitutional rights are infringed upon without proper proof and justification, just on the basis of fiscal need. If that's the case, then it has to be proven. It can't just be claimed.
Elizabeth, while having a judgment like this in your hand, of course, is quite powerful in and of itself, I'm just wondering about expectation, right? And the creation of expectation and what it means then going forward, given some of these issues around the fiscus that we've spoken about.
Cathy, this is why I would ask SASA or DST to actually not appeal this ruling, because this ruling is very, very important for beneficiaries. You would not understand as a ground worker what this means to beneficiaries, especially the poorest of the poor who can't put a plate of food on the table. So if social development is about caring and caring about the well-being of South Africans, it would be wise for them not to really appeal these regulations and rather work with us NGOs on actually setting a better policy up that is going to be beneficial for beneficiaries.
As you're speaking, Elizabeth, I'm reminded of the court ruling that had also declared an unconstitutionality to load shedding, and it compelled then the government to ensure that there were sufficient measures in place at public institutions, schools, police stations, etc., when it comes to backup supply. It's been over a year, if memory serves me correct, or round about a year since that particular judgment came out. And what we know is that we haven't been able to implement it. A part of the reason is because then government and departments will say there just is no money to put up solar infrastructure or backup energy at all of these public institutions. So yes, you have this powerful judgment that is there, but of course the implementation thereof is obvious and is there for everybody to see. How do you ensure that a judgment like this one does not follow the same line, that we're not going to be having this conversation in a year's time? And of course, what we also know is that it will apply to the regulations in place as until the end of the current financial year, which is going to be the end of March. So what happens then beyond that? Are you going to wait to see how SASSA implements the rules in terms of the SRD grant? We don't even know if it's going to be continued, if I'm correct on this one. Do we know that it's going to be continuing this year? The president still has to let us know, Shirley.
Cathy, I definitely do think it is going to be extended past this year. As IHA and then did pressure Treasury, because it wasn't mentioned in the midterm budget speech, there was no allocation actually under social development for the SRD. But IHA actually challenged that, and they did get some information that it was listed under some other portfolio, that there was an allocation made for it. So we do think it will definitely go beyond March 2025. It will not be stopped. And I don't think South Africa can actually stop the SRD grant now, because it is the constitutional right of a beneficiary to social assistance if they cannot provide for themselves. So I don't think they will stop it. And second of all, I do think we would really want to be a part in making sure that government actually implements this regulation. I know IHA and hashtag Pay the Grants will definitely be on SASSA and DSD's cases and watching this closely to make sure that it does get implemented.
Sianda?
I'd say, everything that Elizabeth has said for sure. I think the important thing with a judgment as well like this is that the court has ordered the government to begin planning for the SRD grant on a long-term basis, because it not being renewed on a year-to-year basis isn't new. Like, yes, it's expiring now in Feb. We don't actually know what the future is, but with the court order for them to develop a plan, we hope that in the design of the new iteration of the SRD grant, or whatever form of income is going to be coming after that, that they're going to follow those regulations. But I think it's also just powerful having the judgment itself, because it declares a number of aspects of that design as unconstitutional and unlawful. So if those are part of the new design, then whoever has to speak out against that, they have a lot of ammunition in their bag, which I think is powerful in and of itself.
All right, thanks for that contribution. I want to bring in our listeners on this issue.
Cathy Mohlahlana from Tawing in Lekale Machonis. Will this judgment be implemented immediately, or will have to wait for 4 months so that the content of it could be implemented? Thank you.
Morning, Cathy, as well as your guest. Cathy, I'm very happy, because this government, I don't know whether they know what they're doing or they deliberately want to sideline the poor people of this country. The government says that once you're 18 years, you don't qualify for a child support grant, but they expect somebody who is 25 or 30 to be a responsibility of his or her family member. Say you are a breadwinner in your family. You send money to your sister to buy a grocery for the whole family. Guess what? When your sister goes to apply for this grant, she will be disqualified. And the question is, if the government is not responsible, cannot be responsible for 18-year-old, how can I be responsible for a 30-year-old? So this is a stupid law. I'm very happy for your guest, what they're doing.
Morning, Cathy, and your guest there. This is Leonard from Northam. The other thing about the grant is if let's say you deposit the money to the account holder, they take it as if like you have he's receiving salary from somewhere. And here I tried this with my little brother because he's a qualified engineer. So when he gets interviews, sometimes we send him money for transport or toiletries, things like that. But the government takes it as if like he's receiving money from somewhere. Can they deal with this issue as well? Because there's no way you can have an account, then your account must be zero all the time. Zero all the time. Because that 350 for him, it's something, he can buy toiletries, he can travel. Thank you, Cathy.
Yeah, thanks for those voice notes. And that's precisely part of the reason why this matter was also taken to court in as far as these requirements, is that what then do we expect? That because you have family members and others that are coming in to support some of these individuals that on their own really do qualify. Sianda, let me get you to respond to the voice notes.
I think the first question was on whether it would be implemented immediately. So the court doesn't prescribe specific measures on everything, but they do give the government a timeline for them to come up with a plan that effectively deals with the unlawful regulations, as well as like with value and means. And I think an important point here is that we weren't asking the court and to prescribe a value for what the grant should be, but rather that there has to be a long-term plan. So even things like the issue of affordability, that and lack of resources, that can be dealt with on a long-term basis. And I think in terms of the income, that's true, and that was one of the parts that was challenged, with which the court agreed with us on, because the government was refusing to provide a definition of income. They just considered any inflow to be income, but they've said very clearly that it has to be either from formal or informal employment, or a regular form of financial support that can be predicted and relied on a month-to-month basis. So that will mean things like sending someone money to attend job interviews won't be basis of disqualification should that be properly implemented.
Anonymous, you're calling from Germiston. Good morning.
Yes, Ms. Cathy. Ms. Cathy, one of the saddest things about this thing, I'm glad they spoke about the immediacy of the judgment, because I went through it. One of the things that is very sad, Ms. Cathy, is that people at the call center seem to not care about us. I lost the number. When we registered back in 2020, I lost that number. But I think someone who's using it has money. So they're always declining this thing. They say, I've got a means of money in my account. And the other thing is that even if they say that one has the means of the money and they don't pay us, why then were they giving us money when we had the voting months? The month before we voted, the month we voted, and the month after we voted, they gave me the money. After that, then they go back to saying there's means income in my using my details. So it just baffles me to say what that criteria that they're trying to use. Why can't they come back to find out where one is getting what or what not? Because I've been calling those call centers, emailing, doing everything. No one wants to fix my number. So I don't know what to do anymore.
Sure, Anonymous, I can imagine you've been sent from pillar to post. And I think it is also about trying to understand what individuals' personal circumstances are, right? And then making a decision based on that fact. That's what the appeals process is supposed to do. Have you gone through the appeals process?
I can't appeal this case because the number that I use is not being changed. I keep on saying to them, for me to be able to appeal, I have to, because I can't get a OTP number, because I no longer use that number.
I see.
So
So you
it's
need
a very
to
tough one on my
register a
side.
different number to your name in the
Yes.
system altogether.
Absolutely.
And you've been unable to do that.
Emails, calls, everything, but they always tell me they'll escalate it. And then when I follow up, they say, we tried, we spoke to a boss, but we're going to do it, and then we're going to email you, but they do nothing.
Oh, all right. Anonymous, yeah, sorry to hear about that experience. Elizabeth, do you want to come in there, respond to Anonymous, and in that, if you can also include just the questions around where to from here on, because I do think that we need to be realistic about whether or not anything is going to change by this month end, by the end of February, or even by end of March.
Yes, Cathy, I just want to say to Anonymous, they is correct. If you say the call center does not help, and I brought this up numerous times with SASSA, even when they changed the call center agents last year, I asked them to please send them for proper training before they resume those jobs. It clearly didn't happen. So, Kitty, you can give Anonymous my number off air, and you can contact me, because there is a way that you can update your contact details. That is via the identification verification link. But in order to do that, you need to have a smart card ID, because as you know, SASSA is now trying to curb fraud. So everything is via identification verification. So this is also a very good point to make to other beneficiaries out there, that they need to go and apply for their smart card ID, as the green ID book does not work with the verification link. So if you want to update your contact details, you need a smart card ID, you can contact me. Currently, the system has been offline since the beginning of the year. I was promised it will be fixed soon, in a few days. I don't know how many days that will be. And as soon as it's up and running, I will request a link for him, and he can do the verification, and his number will be updated. Because that's what I do. I work on a daily basis with beneficiaries. I help them with all those issues, because the call center cannot do their jobs.
All right, Elizabeth. And in terms of the judgment, as things stand, yes, you may have gotten it set down, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the regulations are going to change immediately.
No, it won't. If I working with the department on a daily basis, I can definitely tell you that they're going to appeal the matter. Definite. That's a definite. That is how SASSA operates. That's how SASSA works. SASSA does not care about beneficiaries, and they do not care about the poorest of the poor.
All right, we'll leave it there then for this morning. That is Elizabeth Raitis, Deputy Chair of #Pay the Grants, Sianda Baduza, Basic Income Researcher at the IEJ. As things stand, we still are waiting to hear from SASSA in terms of what their next move will be, currently studying the judgment. And of course, you know, there is a limited period during which they can actually appeal if that is what they decide to do. So we should know in the next 14 days what exactly the government then will respond to, how the government will respond on this particular matter. Well, that's where we leave it on the talking point for today. We're back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
This summer, we celebrate 30 years of democracy with 30 Winds of Change on Sundays at 9:30 p.m. on SABC2, a tribute to the heroes who shaped our nation. Join us as we reflect on our country's journey with the likes of Advocate Thuli Madonsela, Mfundi Vundla, Chief Justice Mogoeng, Helen Ziller, and many more. 30 Winds of Change, 30 years of progress, one powerful story. Download SABC Plus and stream your favorite shows anytime from anywhere. Ritswari Vibe, only on SABC2.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book These Things Really Do Happen to Me by Kaya Dlang, read by Lerato Mvelase.
A crush and a death. I don't remember when I met her exactly, but I know where it was. I was working at the Jupiter Drawing Room, an agency in Cape Town, and she came in as part of the Ripple Effect, an internship program started by Ross Cowles, an executive creative director and one of the agency's founders. She had an elegant, fine-lined walk, but she always seemed to be in quite a hurry. I never really got to know where she was hurrying off to. When I finally got to speak to her, I realized that her speech was equally hurried, but in a gentle manner, the talking of someone who had spent a lifetime being told by her parents or someone not to speak too loudly. She had a creative spark, though, and the angst was released when she expressed herself in writing. In those days, we did not have Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube to distract us. We had smoke breaks, and I'm not a smoker, but I am restless, with a short attention span. Every 40 minutes, I would take a break to talk to other people in the agency. That was how I got to know a lot of people that I worked with. One day, I saw her typing on one of the iMacs in the office, and I asked her what she was working on. We talked a bit about her work. Then I asked her what else inspired her. She told me that she loved to write and showed me some of her material. I read what she had written. It was then that I saw her for the first time. Her poetry was simple and hard and painful. There was a suffering behind the shy, smiling, and slightly seductive Muslim girl. Her depth was visible in the fictitious characters she wrote about. We quickly became friends and would often talk about books and writing. She would also send me songs she liked so I could listen to them. I suspect that we both began to develop crushes on each other. The God of Small Things is one of my favorite books of all time, and I gave her a copy. It was a book that had been recommended to me by another friend of mine, Ruth Ishimu. After I told Ruth that I stopped reading fiction in high school and was completely over it, she dragged me to exclusive books in Cavendish Square in Cape Town and showed me snippets of Arundhati Roy's prize-winning novel. She was 31, not old, not young, but a viable, diable age. The words hit me deep in my soul because they made me realize that any age is a viable age to die, just like my father, who was still in his late 20s when he was killed. She fell in love with the book as much as I had. I continued reading her writing, and it continued to intimidate me because of how deeply expressive she was. One day she wrote me a poem, something no one had done for me before. She called it Memory Burn. Memory Burn Poem. This is not welcome in our place. This moment shall never cease. You're woven into the tapestry of my memory, where you shall echo in eternity. Your name stained upon my lips, your touch burnt into my skin. I wear you like an aching in my blood, for you will always be with me. I was happy about the poem, but wasn't sure how to feel about it because I was an emotional coward then. I read it over and over again. I couldn't believe what the poem said. Not long after she had written me her poem, I came up with the second poem I had ever written in my life. We were friends. Maybe not. Maybe more. Maybe less. Maybe between friendship and what would never be. Polite friends. With polite feelings and polite words. Feelings lingered, dangled, unsaid, unspoken. Obvious secrets. Polite friends with polite feelings and polite words. We smiled, some secret, invisible kisses never shared but wished for. Polite friends with polite feelings and polite words. On Saturdays we saw movies, but really saw each other. We held hands. That were never held. Polite friends, polite feelings and polite words. I adore you, we would say. 3 polite words, bearing 3 bolder words that would never be said. Polite friends with polite feelings and polite words. You sat on my desk, you wore my shades, you sent me poetry. You wrote me a poem. I wear you like an aching in my blood, for you will always be with me. Polite friends with polite feelings and polite words. There was one day when I believed we would act on our self-restraint. I was leaving for Johannesburg the next day and bidding farewell to the city I had known for 10 years, Cape Town. We were at the Design Indaba, the world's largest gathering of designers, where we'd been attending various seminars together. During the last session on the very last day of Design Indaba and my last day in Cape Town, she whispered in my ear and said, "Please, hold my hand." I took her hand and her own dug into mine desperately. I was convinced that she had come to realize that she didn't want me to go to Johannesburg,